Hello everyone, good morning. Happy Friday. Today is day 12 going live. If you're catching the live, please hop on and say hi, drop a comment if you like. If I can see them, I will definitely respond. If you're catching the replay, please let me know in the comments, say hashtag replay or something along those lines. So today I want to share with you, I have no idea why I'm compelled to share this with you today, but today's the day that I am going to speak openly about this journey. So, it's a tender subject for me, and you'll see the caveat in the description of the video, noting that I'm not currently open or available to any shame or judgment. If you would like to have a conversation aside from this public forum, I am so happy to do that. Please do reach out. I am open to having conversations. So, I would like to share with you guys today my battle with alcohol that I've experienced in my life and the journey to sobriety and the outcome of that sobriety and where it has led me to be in my life now. So, like I mentioned, I have no idea why I'm compelled to share this today. I'm just trusting. I'm just trusting the pulls, and this is what you guys get today. This is the piece of me that I am being called to share. So I would like to note that my lineage does hold a natural inclination for alcoholism. So in no way do I see that as an excuse or use it as one. That's just a piece that factors in. I had my first drink at 13. My older sister threw me and my twin sister a birthday party, and that's how old I was when I had my first drink. So I reflect on that. My daughter's 13. She just turned 13 in August. And holy, does it make me emotional to think how young I was when it all started. So reflecting on that is crazy, like having a living, breathing child beside me of the same age where, my journey, my relationship with alcohol truly began, is super clearly, you can see how emotional it gets me, right? It really tugs at my heartstrings. So, further to that, I used alcohol recreationally through, high school, through my teenage years, through my 20s. Before I knew I was pregnant, I partied a whole bunch because it was in December when I actually became pregnant with my daughter. Partied a whole bunch before I even knew, and then naturally quit drinking. For me, I was able to quit drinking during my pregnancy. That was something I was capable of doing, thankfully. So that was a gift that I feel happened for me. And beyond that, I continued to use alcohol recreationally. And I really think, so I didn't realize that it was a challenge for me. I thought I had it under control. I felt very controlled when I was using alcohol and when I was drinking and things like that. And I didn't actually recognize until much later that it was truly something that I struggled with, that it was actually an addiction for me, and it was actually a problem in my life. So I'll get to those pieces. So I had my daughter when I was 24. So I was in my early 20s. I continued to use alcohol sporadically. I continued to struggle to stop at the end of the night. When the night was wrapping up, I wanted to keep going, I was often like the life of the party, in my high school years. I was the fun girl. I was the party girl. I got people fired up and had a good time. I was, up for all the fun and all the adventures and all the things, and it's tons of fun. Like, I loved it, honestly. Like, in retrospect, I loved it. I don't love what it created in me and who it created in me and why, but in the moments, it was great, right? So then moving through my life, and when I started to recognize alcohol was truly an issue was in my 30s. So I had the relationship with my daughter's dad ended when I was in my early 30s. In 30, it was the year that it all shifted for me. And I leaned on alcohol to cope with that experience. And naturally, we all know that's not a healthy coping mechanism, but you use what you have in your resource pool. You know, I had done lots of self-development work along the way. I have done lots of self-care. And this one, I'll call it a demon because that's so often what it's referred to. This addiction was something that stuck with me through it all. And I could easily play it down and act like it was no big deal and that I had a handle on it, you know, like I was just the fun time girl. It's not that I had a problem, it's that I had fun, right? That was my outlook on it. And so when that relationship transitioned, I really leaned hard on alcohol to cope. Now, I have to say, I don't feel like it wildly affected my ability to be a parent because my daughter and my relationship has always been very close. It's always been very close. We've always had a quality relationship. I've always been there. It didn't make me, you know, as a functioning alcoholic. I was a functional parent. I was a functional employee. I was a functional friend. I was just the fun time girl. And as I went through the years and I was looking more and more at myself, and my self-development was getting more deep and more connected and more genuine and more true, I started to recognize that I was having a problem. And I wasn't ready to admit it yet. It took a long time for me to recognize that I needed to actually own that I had a problem and actually acknowledge that it was something that I struggled with. So eventually I started to recognize that, and I started to, you know, have conversations with myself about it. I started to have conversations with my parents about it, you know, like before I quit drinking, a couple years before I quit drinking, I told my mom, like, you know, I recognize that I'm an alcoholic. I recognize that. I see that in myself. I know that. I look around and I see that in some people around me, and I empathize with the struggle because at the end of the night, you know, it's not a drink or two. It's not a glass of wine. It's the bottle, right? It's not have one or two and then slow down and wrap up the night and go home. And, you know, it's when you leave and you go home, you sometimes drink more, or, you know, it eventually got, for me, like in the phase where in certain phases of struggle through my life, it was actually drinking alone. And that was okay for me because I was just unwinding from my day, right? Before I recognized that it was that I was actually facing an addiction, and acknowledging that I was having a genuine struggle with quitting. So many times I quit for periods of time, you know, like I would clean up for a month out of just desire to clean up my health and my system. And after a while it was okay, but I think I knew it was temporary. You know, I think I always knew I could go back to it. So my motivation to clean up was there because I knew it would come again. You know, I knew that I could have a glass of wine again. I knew that I could have a beer on a hot summer day with friends. That type of thing. So, you know, in intimate relationships, I do think it impacted some of those relationships, especially right before I actually decided to become sober and put in the effort it took for me. And I didn't like seeing that my addiction was negatively affecting people that I loved and people that I cared about. So, you know, I know that it's affected some of my friendships along the way. I know that some of my friendships were based on that. So they weren't deep quality friendships. They were party friendships, right? And when I reflected back, when I really was like, okay, it's time. Like, I need to really look at this seriously and take stock of what's going on in me. I was like, I'm not confident in myself. I don't feel worthy. So I was numbing and hurting myself and pushing away the things that made me feel less than. And the things that made me feel less than were my belief that I was less than. They were just showing up in my life. And you know, like, our reality is a reflection of our inner environment, you know, that creates our external environment. So the things that were showing up in my life that made me feel unworthy and less than and not good enough, not deserving of love, were all of actually reflections of the beliefs I held inside me about myself. I didn't truly love myself. I didn't take time to care for myself. I didn't feel like I was deserving of somebody else's love truly. And so the catalyst to change, apparently this part's hard. The catalyst to change was meeting my now husband. He loved me in the way that I always dreamed of being loved. He loved me in the way that I was working at loving myself. I was not yet sober completely. I was cutting back and I was working on it. I was trying, right? And the catalyst to change was his love. So, oh my God, you guys, I didn't realize this was going to get so emotional. And truly because he saw me, the best in me always. And he, despite the hard times and despite my alcoholism actually hurting him too, he stood by my side. And he loved me for me. He believed that I was deserving of everything and more. And he gave it to me. He wanted to give me the world on a platter. And he's done everything in his power to do that. And he could see the woman underneath the pain and underneath the hurt and underneath the lack of self-love and the lack of worthiness and deservingness. And so my husband was the catalyst to change, which is so beautiful and so grateful. So right before our wedding, we were together only a short period of time before we got engaged, about 6 months. And before we got married, which was within just about a year of us having dated, I had quit drinking altogether. There was no more working on it. There was no more trying. That was it. My battle with using alcohol was done. I decided that him and me and my daughter and our love and our world were enough. I deserved to figure out how to love me truly. And right before I met him, I was on the way. I was still using alcohol a little bit, but I was on the way to loving myself in the way that I believed I deserved from someone else. We all know, like, that self-love starts with ourselves. That's why we have, you know, when we have hurtful partners, it's because we're hurting ourselves. They're a reflection of how we treat ourselves. And so I was working on that. I was working on that self-love and that self-esteem and that self-respect component before he came into my life. And then here was the manifestation of that effort, right? He showed up, he walked in and, you know, basically kicked in my door and was like, I'm here to love you forever. and just for who you are and how you are in each and every moment. And I couldn't be more grateful, and I couldn't be more proud of him and me. You know, like, he showed up truly as himself, and he holds space still to this day for me to have the ability to do the same thing. He loves me through everything. He shows up, he's supportive, he's there, he's encouraging. When I told him I decided I wanted to quit drinking, he's like, good, we're gonna do it together then. He doesn't have a problem with alcohol. He can have a beer or two very casually, still to this day. He can drink socially and it's totally fine, but his support of me, his love for me, allowed him to choose to stand by me in my moment of struggle, right? So he was able to step up and hold my hand through one of the greatest challenges I've had in my life and be by my side. And so the outcome of that is, you know, I have not been in a healthier place mentally and emotionally in my whole life. I have not been in a healthier state physically in my whole life. The shift in the community that I started to grow before this change has just exploded. It has opened up doors, and it's not because of my sobriety. It's because of how I have learned to love myself, how I've learned to stand by myself. There have been many, many days since I've been sober. Sometimes it's every day of the week. Sometimes it's once a week, a couple times a month that I struggle. I want to drink, and I want it bad, especially when stress hits. I learned what my triggers were in reflection, and being sober, I could really see what my triggers were. Because when emotional shit comes and the storm blows in, the easiest thing for me to do was to numb out. Face some of it where I could, where I was capable, because that piece of me was growing along the way. But then I would numb it out and I would resume the journey the next day because it was just too much to actually deal with, right? So in reflection, being sober and not leaning on that crutch, that crutch of, essentially for me, it was self-harm and it was damaging. Taking that crutch out and just throwing it away and having to figure out how to stand by myself truly in every way possible was so challenging. And, going into my choice of sobriety, I thought I had a handle on it, right? Because I was getting really good. I was getting great at setting boundaries. I was able to communicate those boundaries and stand by myself in those decisions externally. What I struggled with was the boundaries within myself, right? That's why I was working on quitting. That's why I was trying to quit here and there, because I wasn't giving myself a boundary out of self-respect that I was willing to then respect in return and stand by, right? So, those inner boundaries were the ones that were challenging for me. And, and not to say, so I'm not going to justify my stance on being an alcoholic. It was just going to say something along the lines of, I was functional. I upheld relationships and motherhood very well. There was a lot of things that I faced and overcame through motherhood, but I don't need to justify. That's my self-judgment coming up. So I don't actually need to justify why or how I was a functional alcoholic. I'll leave that. So really what I want to talk about now is where this led me to, this whole journey and this whole self-exploration. And since being sober, my confidence, my self-esteem, and my actual love for myself and my ability to stand by when I set a boundary for myself and say, this really isn't healthy for me, so it's something I'm not going to engage in, or this really is healthy for me, so this is a behavior I actually am going to adopt and I'm going to stick to it because I deserve it, because it matters, it means something to me, because I mean something to me, has just absolutely changed everything in my life. My marriage, my relationships, my ability to have internal and external boundaries, my health, my relationship with my daughter, which was always great, has now been better. I didn't even think it could be better. And it's gotten even better. We are more close. We are more honest. We're more transparent. We've talked about some of the hard times. We talk about some of the things that we didn't really talk about before. We just both struggled through. My daughter and I were on our own for 6 years. So it was something that, we've been able to talk about various components of things that we just didn't really discuss before. And on the journey, this journey of sobriety and self-esteem, self-confidence, self-love, and encouragement so these are all the reasons why I so strongly advocate for self-care. This is why I so advocate for support systems, support networks, for health. This is why I've recently partnered with a company on top of my coaching business. When I tell my clients, I get it. If you're struggling with a demon, it might not be the same demon, but I get it. I feel you. And it's true because that's coming from my core. I genuinely can relate on some level. And naturally, most people don't know these things about me, right? It's not something that you just talk about openly every day. So, this is why I've pursued coaching, because I truly believe every single person deserves support at any point in their journey. There was points in my journey where I didn't feel like I had support necessarily. It probably was there, but I didn't feel I was deserving of it, so I didn't reach out and seize it, right? I want to be that person who's walking by somebody's side. I recently partnered with a company who is science-based. You know, like I've always loved science my whole life. I have a background in nursing and yoga and Reiki and all because I love science. I love science and I love serving. So partnering recently with a company that's science-based, that's clean living focused, that's clean ingredient focused, that is community centered, that is leadership focused, is all inclusive, is non-judgmental, and is embracing of all of the differences, just aligns so perfectly with my journey, with coaching, with all of the things I have worked for the last 10 years, I'll call it. The last 10 years, and especially the last couple years, 2 years for sure. So I think that sums it up. Again, I really have no idea why I was compelled to share this story with you today, but there it is, laid out all on the table for you. And like I said at the beginning, if you have any comments or you want to have a private discussion, let me know. Like, even as a friend, I'm not saying it from a coaching perspective. I'm just saying, like, if there's something that comes up for you that is, this conversation has stirred something in you, reach out. I'm happy to have a chat. And thank you all for being the platform to hold space for me to share this journey so openly, and thank you for receiving me with open arms. I love you all, and I hope you have you know what? You guys have a beautiful Friday. I know I'm going to. I have a hair appointment a little bit later, and I get to go pick my daughter up from school and take her to an appointment, and the sun is shining. So I hope all of you have an absolutely beautiful day too.